Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be another question and queries. These videos in which I ponder weird things that relate to books, book tropes, or the bookish community in general. And keeping on the same beat as last week, we're going to talk a little bit more about supernatural beings. So one thing that I've always kind of questioned is mermaids and mermaid species. Not specifically how mermaids are born, even though that is a question in and of itself that I quite haven't figured out yet. I want to talk more about mermaid species. So we know we have a lot of different myth and lore about what type of mermaids exist, depending on your countries, depending on your cultures. Mermaids can differ, but for the sake of this, we'll just go with mermaids having a human top half and a fishy bottom half. Now my question is about mermaid species. Do mermaids have a specific fish that they replicate? Does their bottom half match a specific fish that we have in the ocean? Because I've really wondered this, because mating would differ whether or not the mermaid was cold-blooded or warm-blooded, and that would probably depend on which fish half they have. So say it's a shark, right? So their lower half is shark, and then say another one's lower half is more whale. Does this differentiate in the size that they are? Say, are mermaids that have goldfish bottoms really small mermaids? Or is there any sort of specificity when it comes to species of mermaids? Do mermaids change and have different races depending on which type of fishy parts they have, just like how humans differ in what kind of ethnicity that you have? Like, it's a question that I have had. And with this change based on whether or not the fish or fishy animal that they are having a bottom half of is a mammal or a cold-blooded fish, because what if it's a dolphin? Like, does that change how mermaids are born? I don't know, because fish lay eggs. Dolphins lay dolphins. Like, they birth dolphins. But this is like a question that's kind of been bothering me, and I've just been trying to figure out how it would work, because in a mermaid society, do mermaids just in general stem from the same like fishy tree, or are there different species and races of mermaids depending on what type of fish parts they have, and whether or not the fish parts they have lean more cold-blooded or warm-blooded? And it's a question. Like, it really, like, think about it. Think about how diverse your mermaid population would be if, say, some had like dolphin halves, some had like shark halves, some had mackerel tails. Like, it would be a really interesting sort of story to write if your mermaids really differed in the species that they had based on the species of fish. And we could categorize them all under this umbrella of mermaid, because mermaid generally refers to someone who is half fish and half human. And it would be a really interesting story to watch and see, to actually like dive into this differing mermaid culture depending on what kind of bottom half you had. And we see a little bit of this in, say, Little Mermaid, right? Ursula doesn't have a fish tail, but she has octopus legs. So she technically counts as a mermaid, but of course she's a completely different species. So how would that look in a mermaid kingdom? What sort of hierarchy would they have? Like, what type of fish would be the kingfish of all of these fish? And how would they interact with each other based on it? Like, would everybody be terrified of shark mermaids? Or would, like, everybody be totally okay with shark mermaids? Like, what would their facial structures look like? And would they have special features depending on what fish that they had some sort of ancestry to? Would the size also be affected by what sort of ancestry that they had? So say like that whale mermaid I was talking about, would she be a very, very large mermaid because whales tend to be really, really big? Would goldfish mermaids tend to be really, really small? Like, There's so many possibilities that I would just like someone to write a book about mermaids, whether it's a picture book that I can just flip through and look at all these different species, or a book that just takes place underwater and is about a whole community of mermaids and me getting to see all of these different types. I think we limit ourselves too much and we forget that these supernatural creatures that we have mythed about and we've created legends of can be a lot more diverse and cooler than we originally ever intended them to be, and all of this can fall under the same type of lore without us even having to explore different cultures' lore about, say, mermaids, and then add in those different cultures and add in all that different lore around the world while also expanding your own. Like, imagine how amazing that could look. And I would just really like to see this story. I don't think I see a lot of mermaid stories in general unless they're like stories targeted to younger children. So I would like to see like more mermaid stories because I think mermaids are pretty interesting characters. I would just like to see more stories with like sea organism sort of stuff because I think the ocean has like so many possibilities for interesting stories. So my question to you, and like the main question of this video, is do you think that mermaids could have different species depending on what sort of fish their fish have was? Because I think that they could, and I think that would be a very interesting concept to see in a story that would just be so rich and awesome, and I would like to see it, okay? I would like to see this. So if you like what you're seeing here, if you want to see more, click all those bunnies down below, and goodbye, internet.